This presentation is about helping Power BI users use SQL statements confidently when connecting to a database. The key point is that many Power BI users understand the reporting need, but may not know how to write the SQL needed to bring in a clean, controlled dataset. SQL Mocker supports that workflow. Users can review the schema, check relationships, ask for the dataset they need in plain English, and then copy the generated SQL statement into Power BI. The result is a more controlled Power BI dataset before the data even reaches the report model. When connecting Power BI to a database, the SQL statement option is usually the better starting point for reporting datasets. SQL lets the database do what it is designed to do: filter rows, join tables, group data, and aggregate efficiently. This means Power BI imports less data and receives a more prepared dataset. It can also make the model cleaner, because users can bring in exactly the fields and rows they need rather than importing lots of raw tables and shaping everything afterwards. The query editor is still useful for quick visual steps and light finishing touches, but it can lead to more data being pulled into Power BI, harder to audit join logic, and slower refreshes. The message of this slide is: use SQL statements for the main database connection and use Query Editor for final shaping where needed. The challenge is that SQL statements are powerful, but they are not always easy for Power BI users to write. SQL Mocker helps bridge that gap. It gives users a safer, more visual workspace before they connect Power BI to the database. First, users can visualize their schema in a tabular view, including tables, columns, and data types. They can keep or remove columns, adjust data types, and undo changes if they make a mistake. Second, the relationship view helps users check how tables are joined before the SQL is generated. This helps reduce errors caused by incorrect joins or missing relationships. Third, users can describe the dataset they need in plain English. SQL Mocker then writes a SQL statement using the schema and relationship context. Finally, users can review and refine the SQL before copying it into Power BI. Next, we'll see how SQL Mocker can be used with Power BI to generate a tailored SQL query and import only the data required. In this video, I'll demonstrate how to use SQL Mocker to generate a SQL statement and use it to connect Power BI to a filtered database. From the SQL Mocker homepage, select Start Building Schema, then Create Schema, select Extraction Script, and then the relevant database system. Enter the table names you want to work with, making sure they match the exact spelling used in your database. Next, run the extraction SQL in your own database tool. In this example, we're using SQL Server. Open the relevant database, paste the extraction script, and run it to retrieve the table details SQL Mocker needs. This retrieves the table and column details, data types, and relationships from your database environment. SQL Mocker does not require a connection to your database. You run the extraction script yourself in your own database tool, so your live database remains completely disconnected from SQL Mocker. Next, paste in the extracted results and review the schema, including the table names, column names, and data types. In this example, each table contains more than 50 columns, and we want to remove any unnecessary columns. This is similar to removing columns in Power BI's query editor, but the key difference is that the filtering happens before the data is imported. As a result, Power BI only loads the columns you require, creating a much smaller and more efficient dataset. Next, review the relationships, making sure the joins between each table are correct. After that, the app automatically creates sample data for each table. You can then use the query assistant to ask questions in plain English based on the dummy data. In our case, we want to include all of the remaining columns and filter on product category furniture. The assistant creates the corresponding SQL and shows the query results, so you can check whether it produced the result you expected. Once reviewed, the generated SQL can be copied and used in your real database to check that it works as expected. Next, open Power BI Desktop so that we can connect to the database and run the SQL statement we generated in SQL Mocker. From the Home ribbon, select the option to get data from database. In our case, SQL Server is already displayed. Enter the server name and database name. This information is displayed in your database system. Next, expand Advanced Options and copy and paste the SQL code under the SQL Statement section. Note, if you're not already signed in, you'll need to enter your credentials. In my case, credentials is Windows credential, but this will depend on how your database is configured. Select Next, and then the query editor will open. Next, select Edit Permissions and run the native database query. Check that the columns and values are correct, and then select Close and Apply, which will add the data, the Power BI. If you inspect the model view, you can see that SQL Query has summarized the 3 tables from the database into one condensed table. If I compare to a report I prepared earlier where I connected to the same database but without the SQL statement, and removed the same columns and applied the same filter in Query Editor, you can see that 3 tables are loaded and the file size is larger. By empowering developers to use SQL, this approach helps them build more efficient data models, resulting in faster performance and cleaner, more streamlined reports.